Before we get into anything today, I do want to get into the anatomy of a very interesting smear that's taking place against Bernie Sanders on the interweb. And I don't know how much of a big role this is going to play in the primary. Most likely the local 1984, I believe, SCIU union endorsement that he got today is probably going to play a lot bigger role when it comes to the primary. But in terms of the media coverage of questions he's going to be asked in the next debate, this story will be, I think, a very big deal. It all started when Politico, of all people, released an article. And I say of all people because Politico is well known for their negative articles and history of negative articles against Bernie Sanders. And I think this is going to be the beginning of the establishment tact against Bernie that we're going to see it take hold in the coming days, weeks, and months as the primary gets closer and closer towards game time, towards crunch time. And trust me when I say the Bernie Sanders people are not going to be, I know the channels that I've been seeing, the Bernie Sanders campaign adjacent and campaign people are not going to be taking this lying down. But still, this is very, very disturbing stuff. And what they're attacking them for now, this is Alex Thompson and Holly Otterbein, or Bean. They are having a very interesting situation right now. They're starting to attack him for being too negative. They're saying, "Oh, you're being so negative. You're disunionizing the Democratic Party." Like, it's a primary, whatever the case may be. But he is, I think, there's certain things that have to be upheld here. I think going towards a negative campaign is not the best. You got to do it very strategically. Is pretty much the point here. So this is about yesterday. Alex Thompson tweeting out scoop. Bernie stealthily goes negative on Warren with a volunteer script to tell Warren-leaning voters that she only appeals to the affluent, highly educated, and she's bringing no new bases to the Democratic Party. I retype script below to protect sourcing, he says. This is what he did with Holly Otterbein. So this story on the front page of Politico seems to be mostly going, this is mostly about Warren. It's not about Biden, which obviously he's going negative against Biden, which is I think he has to do. He's the top front runner. There's some major problems about him. He's saying that he's for the Iraq War. He always hated the Iraq War. He's just pretty much making up his history of votes against the Iraq War. He's pretty much, what I'm trying to say is he's lying about the fact that he supported the Iraq War. He's consistently lying about that, and there's a bunch of other problems with his record that really start to need to be exposed, and Bernie starts to need to make the case to the fact that he's the most electable, because there's a big chunk of Biden support that thinks, oh yeah, he's going to be the guy who's going to beat Trump, so anybody but Trump, I got to go with Biden because he's the best guy to beat Trump. That's what the media always tells me. But that's changing. That's something that Bernie Sanders is trying to change, and that's something that he will change by doing what he's doing. So I think you got to start attacking him at some point. But the thing with Warren here is a whole different story. It talks about, they've had a non-aggression pact that Sanders is breaking, and that's a big thing. They hit him for it. Lack of party unity, lack of they hate everything. Oh my gosh, they want to destroy the Democratic Party. So hostile takeover, like that kind of building rage is what they used to smear Sanders with when they're attacking him when he was running against Hillary Clinton the last time. That's what the mojo was. That's what the move was, quote unquote, when it came time, really crunch time. Because we're getting close to Iowa. Folks, everyone's starting to realize that this is very serious now. So they're getting into this, and but this is the tweet that the image of the supposed volunteer script that Bernie is telling his volunteers to come out and say, quote, if this is saying, if they like Biden, I understand. Many people like Biden. The problem is no one is really excited about him. He doesn't have any volunteers and has no support at all among young people. And that's a problem because we need young people to turn out in massive numbers to beat Trump. Biden also has a lot of weaknesses as a candidate that Trump would exploit. Trump would clobber him on it for his Iraq war vote, for instance, and his support of free trade agreements. Very true things, and things that Bernie is beginning to start to attack him on now. That's exactly what Trump did with Hillary, and it's part of why Hillary lost. Bernie, on the other hand, has been consistent in his positions for decades, and voters trust that he's on their side, so it won't work for Trump to attack him on his record. Bernie is the only candidate who's generating enthusiastic movement of people who donate volunteers and vote for him. Volunteer and vote for him. So there's a typo there in this script. If they're leaning Buttigieg, I understand Pete has many admirable qualities as a candidate, but I'd be concerned if he would be able to beat Trump in our elections. And then if they're leading Warren, I like Warren. And then in parentheses, optional. This is the script that he tweeted out. In fact, she's my second choice. But here's my concern about this. The optional was she's my second choice. But here's my concern about her. The people who support her are highly educated, more affluent, more affluent people who are going to show up and vote Democrat no matter what. She's bringing no new bases to the Democratic Party. We need to try and disaffect the working class voters if we're going to defeat Trump. So, I mean, these are all valid cases that people, there's a big difference about Bernie campaign people. Like people who are directly affiliated with the Bernie Sanders campaign coming out and saying things that people who are not associated with the Bernie Sanders campaign can say. Like, there are people in the media all over, supporters of Bernie Sanders, who are saying things that are exactly as follows. Like, she doesn't have a broad enough support. She's not bringing new bases in the Democratic Party. Like, all this stuff. It's true. But there's a big difference when the campaign and people associated with the campaign say it. And it gives you a whole new look. And especially looks good for Warren, who wants to portray herself as the most electable one, who can unify the party and bring everyone together to defeat Trump, because she's the compromise candidate. She's in between the left and the right. And that would probably be a winning lane of the Democratic Party. And that's going to be what she thinks, anyway, is going to be the best lane to win under. So, yeah. So this is what he tweets out. Should have been in the first tweet with Holly Otterbein. The script also takes aim at Biden. He doesn't really have any volunteers. Bernie and Warren. Yeah, Bernie and Warren have had a non-aggression pact that now appears to be fraying. This is from Alex Thompson. There has been friction, like this past summer when Sanders aides kept hitting Warren on Twitter. Warren's Dan Geldon back channel with Bernie's Faz Shakir to try to get the tweets to stop or calm things down. I mean, there's going to have to be some distinguishment at some point between Bernie and Warren, because we are in a primary here. They can't both be co-nominees and co-president, but it's just the reality. Despite reporters prodding a Bernie-Warren fight, both have tried to keep the truce. While Bernie, note that Bernie co-chair Nita Turner today published op-ed, while Bernie Sanders has always stood up for African Americans, Joe Biden has repeatedly let us down. And this is Warren talking to reporters.
At some point, are you going to bag the non-aggression pact and just start drawing more distinctions?
You know, Bernie and I have been friends for many, many years, long before I ever got in politics. And I don't see any reason that should change.
But don't you want to make it easier for voters who are wondering how to make a decision?
Look, I get out every day and try to meet as many voters as I can and talk about why I'm in this race, to talk about my vision, to talk about what's broken, to talk about my plans to fix it.
Yeah, so you pretty much, she's like, I don't want to attack Bernie Sanders here. Like, that's not what I want to do. So now Bernie's going to attack, and it's like, oh, looks bad. He's the disunity candidate. He's pushing for chaos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then here's what Warren has to say after one of her rallies. And this is how, and Matt Taibbi talks about this a lot, like, this is how they get their story. This is how they latch on to their story and keep pushing it until it tries to become a narrative. Like, they made their story up. And now they got their narrative, and now they're going to run with it. And the response of Elizabeth Warren here is now going to become a story.
The Bernie Sanders campaign and the way that they are talking about you at the doors here in Iowa, basically saying that your voters are people who will vote Democrat anyway, that you don't bring new bases into the Democratic tent. Why is he wrong?
I was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. Bernie knows me and has known me for a long time. He knows who I am, where I come from, what I have worked on and fought for, and the coalition and grassroots movement we're trying to build. Democrats want to win in 2020. We all saw the impact of the factionalism in 2016. And we can't have a repeat of that. Democrats need to unite our party, and that means pulling in all parts of the Democratic coalition. It means building a grassroots movement with face-to-face conversations with people, and door not. It means getting a positive message.
Yeah, so pretty much she's pretty much said all the biggest things that she has had to say. But, yeah, there's some pretty heady accusations there. So I was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. Bernie knows me and has known me for a long time. I hope Bernie reconsiders and turns his campaign in a different direction. So pretty much that is what's going on here. But I really think the thing that should be denounced here, and I think the Bernie Sanders campaign has really struggled to paint an effective narrative on this. Maybe they didn't know really what was happening with their volunteer people at really the lowest level. But it looks like this guy, Eric Isaac, who is claims he's a photographer, organizer, and Kings County Democratic Committee member, Bernie supporter, obviously, and this is just a kind of crazy story. So he's apparently there's no reason to believe that he is not, at this point in time, a Bernie Sanders volunteer as he claims to be. So he explains what's actually going on here. Here's what actually happened. A random user who's only ever posted once before posted that document in the Bernie Sanders volunteer Slack group. A moderator promptly removed it and stated that it was not a campaign source. Bernie is not sending his volunteers out to trash any candidate. We have a very strict code of conduct on how we must interact with voters if we want to be a part of the campaign. Politico and every other outlet reporting on this non-story are being used incredibly irresponsibly. I would happily post a screenshot of the conversation in Slack, but then I would be violating the agreement I made with the campaign to not share any screenshots from Slack. They delete anything that talks about any other candidate in a negative way. I could right now go dump a document criticizing every candidate in Warren's campaign app, then screenshot it, send it to Politico so they could write a story about it. This was not a campaign maneuver, period. It amazes me that I'm not a journalist and took me literally just a few minutes to discover the story was false, yet Politico literally had two journalists on the story that could take the time to vet the story. This is going to be, I think, such a huge thing. And if they can effectively counter this narrative here before it gets too far widespread, hopefully that screenshot the Bernie campaign will release that this guy's talking about here. And it's a really crazy situation. So pretty much what happens is a rando uploads their own call script in the Bernie volunteer Slack. It's removed, but someone first sends it to the press. Stories are written about how script is proof that Bernie is attacking Warren, something the press has been dying for. Then Warren criticizes Bernie. The chum is in the water and the sharks in the press. They want it so bad. They're going to eat it up. They're going to gobble it up. But I think they really have to be called out on this because there's no evidence of that. The Bernie Sanders campaign needs to respond to this. If this screenshot from the Slack post of this being removed in the official Bernie's volunteer Slack or whatever, this code of conduct, if that exists in writing, the volunteer code of conduct writing, if elements of the story could be corroborated with real evidence from this chat, I think that would be huge. But in terms of actually giving evidence out there to the media. But in 2016, Hillary heavily implied Bernie was unqualified without saying the word. Bernie responded, and all the anti-Sanders folks were up in arms because she didn't actually say the word. I'm sure everyone will react in the same even in this even worse scenario, right? LOL, no, they weren't. So this is from Matt Binder, who is a Bernie supporter and independent media, I believe Majority Report. But this is the Sanders campaign. I think really needs to get out and start talking about this because right now they're saying, "Oh, our volunteers don't reflect it," but the volunteers have been following what you want them to say. Like it's just the reality of the situation there. This needs to be out to more people. This thread here, I retweeted it, so you can go check that out. Michael Brooks talking about it. Looks like an important clarification on the political story. So it's really not good. And honestly, the Bernie caller script, like, it's not the crazy thing to say anyway. And you do need to, I think we can definitely get into and talk about the importance of having a vital primary, but this is the anatomy of a smear. This is going to be the anatomy of how they come around and turn to the base in this Tuesday and be like, oh, Bernie Sanders is an Democrat guy. He wants to sow discord in the Democratic Party. He wants to stop us from beating Donald Trump. And that's where it's going to go from there. It's just going to be absolute craziness. Anyway, so I just want to get that off my chest. It's a little bit of an introduction, but a very long-winded introduction. Kind of as a first story